Good morning to everyone. I am very honored to welcome you all this morning and thank you all for being here. Cherished survivors, students, community members, parents of students, to a very unique multi-generational commemoration of Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, which occurred November 9th into the 10th of the year 1938. In a moment, you're going to hear more about that from our wonderful educator, Melanie Jacobson. I am Ruth Steinberg. I am the Director of Jewish Family Service at the Jewish Federation, and I also direct our Portraits of Survival program, a permanent exhibit of local Holocaust survivors and educational program, which seeks to educate the community about the Holocaust and the lessons of the Holocaust. And I'm very honored to be in that position. As you just heard from Ruby, remember to mute your microphones unless you are speaking so that we can have a good experience, and again, to select speaker view. As I mentioned a moment ago, I am very honored to be co-hosting this event with Melanie Jacobson, the wonderful educator from San Marcos High School. She is extraordinary and our longest supporter and of the Portraits of Survival program in Santa Barbara. She and her students are extremely lucky. You are all very lucky to have her as a teacher. As we all know, all teachers are not created equal. They're all wonderful, but some are even more wonderful. And you are very lucky, and I've been very lucky to have Melanie in my life, as you are to have her in your life. And so I would now like to ask Melanie to tell us more about this day in history and why every year we choose this as one of the days that we commemorate the Holocaust on this very, very important and somber day in history. Melanie?
Well, thank you. That was very, very generous introduction. It's good to be in multi-generational community this morning to better appreciate how history is never really very far from the surface of our lives. We have a short pictorial overview of the event that brings us together today. So I'm going to share my screen.
Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, November 9th, 1938, signaled the beginning of the Holocaust.
That night, the Nazi Party openly condoned the humiliation of and violence against Jews by ordinary German citizens.
Riots, arrests, vandalism of Jewish-owned businesses, destruction of synagogues, and desecration of Jewish cemeteries descended on towns and cities across Germany and Austria.
One firefighter wrote in a letter that only when a Nazi Party member expressed concern that his house would catch fire from the synagogue burning nearby, did the firefighters use water hoses against the destructive flames.
Identification, roundups, and concentration camps followed in the heels of Kristallnacht, spiraling into genocide that claimed the lives of 6 million Jews and between 5 and 6 million other Nazis who deemed undesirable.
Why commemorate this horrific night? We remember to honor those who perished in the Holocaust.
Remember to honor those who survived and managed to move on with their lives.
80 years later, we see similar acts of hatred and bigotry targeting particular groups of people in this country.
We remember because we know that democracy is as fragile as glass.
The violence of that night of broken glass disrupted the childhoods of the survivors gathered here today. Two of them who lived in Germany at the time of Kristallnacht will share their memories with us. So, Ruth, do you want to introduce Mike, or shall we just move straight into Mike's?
I'll just very briefly say that about Mike, that he selflessly shares his story often. He was born in a small German town, and he was just 2 years old when his parents made the selfless decision which saved his life. And you see him here, little Mike. This picture always makes me pretty emotional. when his parents made the selfless decision and difficult decision to save his life, to include him in the kinder transport program. And Mike will now tell you his story. Mike?
Hi, thank you for joining me. I was born in a small town in Breslau in June of 1936. But what Kristallnacht actually did is it started a movement both in the United States and in Great Britain to bring out Jewish, non-Gentile kids out of Germany and Austria mainly, and trying to get them out of Germany to save their lives. The process in the United States hit a dead end and really never came to fruition, but Great Britain accepted 10,000 kids in what became known as the kinder transport. Now on June 12, 1939, my mother took me to Berlin, where she was going to put me on the train to join the kinder transport. A little aside, in February of this year, I joined Facebook, and I put my story on Facebook, and at that time, I heard from a gentleman in LA that his mother and his two aunts were also on the same transport, and he actually had the passenger list of that transport, and he sent me a copy of it. I couldn't pick it up. It's hard to read, but this is the copy, and here I am. As one of the youngest, I was the youngest on that transport of 168 roughly. It's hard to tell exactly kids. Since I was so young, my mother was actually allowed to join me in the train and take me up to the Port of Hamburg, where she turned me over to one of the girls, 14, 15, 16-year-old girl, which probably was the aunt of this gentleman in LA. We're not sure, but I think there's a good chance that it was. But you saw my picture in London as I arrived. My mother had made arrangements for a family in Glasgow, Scotland, a Jewish family in Scotland, the Ness family, to take me in for the duration of the war. And Mr. Ness actually met me in London to pick me up, and I spent the next year and a half with his family in Glasgow, Scotland. It was Mr. and Mrs. Ness and their daughter Anita, who's about 3-4 years older than I am, and they took me in and took care of it. In the meantime, my mother was back in Germany trying to get my dad out of jail. He'd been arrested on Kristallnacht, just like the other Jewish male adults were arrested that night. And she eventually managed to get him out of jail, and he came over to Great Britain. He was able to go, and the plan was that my mother would follow. They would accept her if she would go into housekeeping, become a maid. But it turned out that it was too late for her, so she never made it because the war broke out. So my mother, the only place she was able to get a visa for was Bolivia in South America. So in early 1940, she actually crossed the Atlantic and went to Bolivia and started a new life down there. Eventually, she was able to get visas for both my father and I. And in late 1940, in December 1940, after several missteps, my father and I crossed the Atlantic, and we went through the U-boat zones. I can remember the guns on the ship firing, and the guns from the ships around us going off. But we managed to cross the Atlantic and get to Bolivia, where I met this strange lady, who, of course, I didn't remember by now. But we spent 10 years in Bolivia trying to get to the States, but because of a quirk of my father's birthplace, we couldn't get visas for almost 10 years, and eventually we came to the States and ended up in Memphis, Tennessee, and then in San Francisco. Over the years, I lost track of the Ness family because I kept corresponding with Mr. and Mrs. Ness, but eventually my letters went unanswered and we lost total track. And here's a picture of the Ness family in Scotland. The little grouch on the left-hand side, that's me. Mr. and Mrs. Ness and Anita, their daughter, is in front of them. This was taken in Scotland when I was there. Anyway, we moved to Santa Barbara in 1970, and just by a quirk of coincidences, in 1993, I managed to reestablish contact with Anita, the daughter of the family that adopted me. And eventually, my wife and I and Lonnie, we went over to Scotland to visit Anita. Her parents had passed away, which I already figured. And we had a reunion a couple of days after we got there, and I met all the cousins who knew me, and they told me what kind of a brat I'd been during my stay there. How everything I did wrong I always blamed on Anita and got away with it. But what I found out that really bothered me was that the Nesses had planned to adopt me. They wanted to adopt me permanently. And that was never the intentions of my parents. And when I left Scotland, Mrs. Ness lost her son, and which really hurt me because, these people saved my life basically, because my mother would never have sent me out of Germany if she did not know where I was going to go, which would have meant that I would not have survived. But because of their generosity, I was able to survive. And then she was so hurt, by the loss of her child, that it really bothered me. Anyway, we visited with Anita and with her two kids and with her grandkids for several times. And my daughter Cindy and my son Jeff, a couple of years ago, they went over there and met the grandchildren, Anita's grandchildren, or the great grandchildren of the Nesses. So we're still in touch with them, and the legacy kind of continues. And it's just, I'm so thankful for their family that that they allowed me to stay with them. And that's a very brief summary of my story.
Thank you, Mike, so much for sharing this part of your life with us and for helping us understand the heartbreak of the mothers in your life and for putting a human face on history. So we're so grateful for you sharing this morning. And my students are going to share some of what they've been thinking about related to childhood, related to being an upstander or a bystander. So I'm going to turn it over now to student Brody.
Hi. For our part of the program, we thought about our childhood and our teenage realities, and we tried to imagine yours.
We wrote poetry and prose and produced artwork that reveal our worries and hopes. We recalled moments when we just stood by and when we found the courage to stand up.
Here's a sampling of what we produced. Each of the readers will share a piece that a classmate produced. First, a poem inspired by poet Diane Lumens.
If at the age of 8 I knew what life entailed. If at the age of 8 I knew what life entailed, I'd gain confidence first and Instagram followers later. I'd play in the rain more and play with my attitude less. I would do less stressing and more self-expressing because I didn't know the self-consciousness that life entailed. I'd take my eyes off my phone and give a phone call to my Grammy. I would care to be free and open to care less. I would think of my toy collection less and grow my recollection of life more. I'd catch more waves and appreciate homework-free days because I didn't know the stress that life entailed. I'd stop worrying about my outfit and learn it's okay to fit out the box. I'd see the improvement more and the setbacks less, because now I know the opportunities that life entails.
This mixed media piece reveals how bystanders don't speak because they feel like they will be judged. A person who is a victim may not be able to speak up because they are in an uncomfortable or dangerous situation. Silence for some is a choiceless choice. The irony is that such self-censorship can increase the danger for others.
In elementary school, my teacher taught us about bystanders, those who are present at the time of an incident but don't get involved. I learned about the bystander effect, when multiple individuals are less likely to help out because no one else does. Some ask, does being a bystander make you a bad person? I think a better question is, will you want to be a bystander again? For me, the experience of being a bystander made me want to change the way I handle difficult situations. My cousin is on the autism spectrum. He's nice, helpful, very funny, and a loving person. A couple weeks ago, I was at practice. My friends started talking about someone, calling him retarded. My mom had always taught my siblings and me that the R word was a bad word, a slur, and was very disrespectful. The word retarded, once reserved with people with developmental delays, is sometimes lodged at autistic people. Over time, the word has become a common way to make fun of any person, implying that they're stupid. When my friend used the R word, everyone started laughing. I didn't join in, but I also didn't say, hey, that's a hurtful word, don't say that again. When I heard her say the word, I immediately thought of my cousin. Later at home, when I remembered how no one said anything, how I didn't say anything, I asked myself, was I being disrespectful for not saying anything? I wondered how my silence might affect my cousin and what my inaction said about me as a person. These are questions I'm asking myself a lot lately. This is what comes to mind when I think of the Holocaust. How many bystanders stayed silent? How many actually wanted to do something to help, but in the end didn't?
This piece is called We Are One Because of Our Humanity. At the ripe age of 8, my greatest worry was what Mom made for dinner and if I would be able to stay up and watch my favorite cartoon when I got home. I was lucky enough to not have any other worries. I had a roof over my head, food in my stomach, and warm, cozy sheets to cast my slumber in. I never had to worry about my parents not coming home. I never had to worry about getting detained while walking to school or for talking about God like the proud Catholic I am. The comfort of consistency allowed me to thrive and learn. My faith never faltered. I never had an excuse to question the presence of God. Even now, I continue to have the life so many Jewish children would have dreamt of having after Kristallnacht. I never had to experience discrimination. As a Catholic, I am taught to love my neighbors and to honor the heritage I share with my Jewish brothers and sisters, whose faith formed the roots of my own. The strength, courage, and will it took to maintain faith in the face of hatred inspires me. The life of a Jewish child during the late 1930s is hard to imagine. As a person of faith, I can't imagine watching my place of worship, a safe and sacred refuge, shattered and engulfed in flames before my eyes. I've grown up privileged enough to never have experienced such hate, so it's impossible to fathom the immense pain you have to withstand. But I can offer an ear and an open mind to the suffering of others. I think of this passage from the Old Testament that ties my faith to yours, something we both know to be true despite our differences. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. Micah chapter 6, verse 8.
All of my life, I have lived in the only home I have ever known. It holds the memories of my childhood. Sunday night family dinners sitting by the fire, building forts and playing games with my big brother. My grandma used to sing songs to me so I would fall asleep. The songs were silly and sometimes made me laugh. Her songs made me feel cozy, warm, and tired. When I think about what my childhood might have been in another place, another time, I'm grateful for all the people around me and how lucky I am to live in a safe place.
Adasa, would you like to share the piece?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's another poem of childhood wishes and regrets. The taste of chocolate melting in my mouth, not the taste of broccoli. The smell of wet grass and sweat on a cold Saturday morning, not the smell of iron from blood spilling off my knee, the sound of piano bouncing off the walls, not the sound of my brother crying, the feeling of soft fur of my dog on my cheek, not the feeling of regret in my stomach, the sight of salty waves crashing on the shore, not the sight of my friends having to move away.
When I was 8 years old, I worried about being left home alone while my parents would quickly pick up my siblings. I worried about making sure I could get to soccer, softball, and basketball practices. Constantly conspiring to convince my dad to get my siblings and me a horse, disregarding the fact that a horse would not fit in our backyard, let alone fit our budget. My sisters and I would argue over who our 2-year-old brother liked the best, race up and down the hall, perform shows during dinner for our parents. Snuggling up on the couch next to our dog, rewatching Disney movies, everything felt safe at home. And the worst thing that happened was getting called out by the teacher for being off task and disrupting the classroom. Since COVID-19, it feels as if my life has been thrown into the washing machine on a spin cycle that will never end. It seems that whenever I can get myself back on my feet, it starts turning again. In the spring, after a great week of training, the idea of COVID-19 canceling sports seemed ridiculous. Things changed so quickly. Soon I was rolling out of bed onto the floor, Zooming for physics. Stuck at home, the haven of my family felt strangely isolating. I felt as if I had lost all my friends. The closure of school mounted new hurdles for me. Making sure I'm completing all my online school and that my siblings are too. On days when I'm losing hope, there's a tiny part of me that reminds me I'm still capable, and I know that others have it even worse than me. Recent months have challenged me more than I thought possible, but also have brought out other stronger versions of myself, and so I continue with that knowledge every day.
This is a poem called Perfect Target. I'm awkward, I'm quiet, I'm shy. I'm the perfect target. Whenever someone is in a mean mood, they turn to me. They take their anger out on me. Because they know I won't say anything back. I'm here. I hear them taunting, jeering. I'm silent. My eyes are lenses and I'm looking through. Stuck inside myself like a turtle in its shell. Next time. I'll say something next time. I'll walk away next time. There won't be a next time, but there will. Because I'm the perfect target, a bystander in my own body.
It is a lovely fall in 2013, and as the dismissal bell rings, a boy springs to his feet and heads for the door. A day in 3rd grade isn't the most difficult, but it keeps a child busy and ready for a change of pace by the end of a 7-hour school day. Jumping from leaf to leaf, the boy smiles each time he hears the crunch of them underneath his feet. The kid doesn't care that his shorts are on backwards, that his bowl cut is blowing around frantically in the wind, or that he is singing loudly, and quite badly to himself, blissfully unaware of the world around him, threatening to end his innocence, to show what lies in the shadows, what the youngster is protected from in his wealthy, predominantly white neighborhood. Fast forward 7 years, he stands taller. He is no longer very skinny, and his blue eyes have lost their previous shine. Shadowed freckles sprout across his cheeks and his crooked nose. His hair is still often tangled, but now he has more of it, and it waves across his forehead. This, of course, is me. A lot has happened in the years between then and now. I admit that I am not the innocent, carefree boy I once was. Do I miss it? More often than not, yes.
Building a track for my trains, writing notes in hopes of fairies finding them and writing back about their adventures with the pirates. Eating mac and cheese. Back then, my knowledge of the world outside my bubble was small. Now my eyes are open. Now I can see the tragedy in the world, and it fixes me in place, makes me more mindful of how nice it is inside my bubble.
Childhood 2013. A child could never even begin to comprehend the idea that someone would hurt them. When I was 8, I had just moved to a new school. I had the typical worries about making friends, doing well, and fitting in. But as I returned home every day, I was greeted with a new set of problems. My mother suffered from mental illness and couldn't even remember what year it was, let alone picking me up from school and paying bills. And so I was tasked with something very difficult, remembering what my mother could not. As a kid, I wanted to be carefree and go play with my friends, but I wasn't allowed to. I helped my mom. What brought me comfort was imagining my life in the future, doing something great and having all the fun in the world. I didn't understand why she was that way and why she got so upset at me or why she was different from all the other moms. I just wanted to be normal with a warm, caring family who bakes cookies and holds me when I'm sad. Adolescence 2020. As a teenager, my worries are much simpler. I said goodbye to my old life 2 years ago, and now my concerns look something like this. Do I have enough time to practice violin and piano, see my friends, and do all my homework? I still dream about doing something big, but more importantly, I just want to make a positive difference in people's lives. Sometimes I think about the future of our country and how it will affect people like me who have dreams and aspirations. It isn't fair that our future is still unsure because of the color of our skin or our sexuality. As a person with privilege, my future is fairly stable. I don't have to worry about getting mistreated because of my identity. But this isn't the case for everyone. I dream of a future with equal opportunity for everyone.
When I was 7 years old, my family and I moved to Santa Barbara. We arrived in the dead of night on my first day of first grade. My mom took me and my brother to school that morning, letting my brother walk himself to class. I refused to leave my mom's side, so she walked me up to the classroom. The teacher came outside with an impatient look upon her face, arms crossed. My teacher thought it was ridiculous that my mom was walking me to class, so she told my mom to let go of my hand and let me go into the class. I was so nervous I started bawling in front of my new teacher, and all my classmates stared at me from the rainbow rug. I eventually let go of my mom's hand, and my teacher walked me to my square on the rainbow rug. Later, when we had to go out on the playground for recess, I was still feeling betrayed that my mom left me alone without a friend. But I knew she couldn't hold my hand every step of the way. At recess, a girl wearing a bright pink shirt with zebra print pants came and sat next to me on the wood bench. She asked if I wanted to be friends with her, and my face instantly lit up. We went on the swings every day together, our tradition until the end of elementary school, when we eventually grew apart. What a difference she made in my life.
This is a poem I wrote inspired by Ellie Wessel's memoir, Night. Imagines how it may have felt to have been robbed of a carefree childhood. 2015. Sunset. Light disappears into the horizon. Stars appear in the summer sky. Innocence. Enjoying time with friends and family. Living, laughing, loving. Daylight returning. We run through sprinklers with our dogs in the backyard. My abuelo feeding us mangoes, remembering his past childhood in Cuba. Not a care in the world, not thinking of the past nor the future to come. 1938. Daylight stolen, leaving children stuck in the darkness of night. Stripped from joy, filling the emptiness with fear and questions. Where is my family? What will happen to me? What has happened to my future? May 1945. Gates open, helping hands feed us daylight. Now what? Broken. Like a branch fallen from the tree in a storm, childhood can't be recovered. But the tree will grow with time and tending and sunlight to chase away the darkness.
Well, thank you, students, for your voices, your insights, and your hope. Now we will hear from another survivor in our audience today, Erica Kahn, who remembers Kristallnacht.
In 1935, a law was passed. There were laws that came out almost every other day to change our life. And this law was passed that all Jewish children had to go to a Jewish school. In 1938, in November 9th, when Kristallnacht happened and everything was destroyed, I was on my way to school that morning, and I passed through a mob of people, and the synagogue on Fasanstraße at that time was burning. The people who were standing around were shouting, yelling, and screaming, "Throw them into the fire. Throw all these pigs into the fire." And it was very scary to walk through there. There was no fire engine. There was no police that came to help to stop the people, and they were getting louder and louder. When I got to my school, which I thought was going to be a refuge, even that one was absolutely torn apart. All the sinks were out of the wall, the toilets were out, the books were being burnt in the yard, and all of that, everything was destroyed. There was no more school, and the principal, by the name of Paula Fürst, called the remaining children. We lit candles, and we danced the horror, and that way buried the school. And it was a very heavy moment for me. You can never forget it. There's no forgetting it. Or, yes, you deal with it. You make a new life. You say, all right, this was in the past. Life is very good for you now. But still in all, it's part of life. It's part of my heritage. And I feel very good to talk with people. I would like very much for them to know about it. And I would like them to also be thankful for the time that they have to create, to do, to work, to be, to learn, and to enjoy, and to love life. That's what I would like. I would like them to be aware of what goes on in their government, in their world, in the world around, and I want them to remember that not only 6 million of us were killed, but that genocide seems to be going on.
That has to be an old one.
A number of our survivors that are with us today remember that terrible day. A number of them have direct connection to Kristallnacht, as you heard in Mike's story. His father was arrested that night. Erica remembered it. I don't know if Helga is with us today. She also witnessed it. One of our survivors who may be with us today, Ken Hartog, recently wrote these words. I was 11 years old when I watched my synagogue burn in Cologne, Germany on the 9th of November, 1938. My father's ingenuity led to the USA accepting our family as immigrants. I know I was one of the rare lucky ones. We must stand vigilant and shine light on even the smallest signs of intolerance and hatred. At this point in our commemoration, when we are generally together physically, we light candles together. The survivors as a community will be invited to light candles, and then often we have their children, the next generation will also light candles. Since we all can't do that together, I thought this year on your behalf, I will light behind me. There are 3 candles. Actually, there are 4. I'll explain why there are 4 in a moment. This year on your behalf, I will light 3 candles for the past, the present, and the future. As I light them, I'll explain that I'm lighting a candle for the past. I hope you can see. I'm lighting a candle for the past so that we will never forget. I'm lighting a candle for the present Well, the present is a challenge. Maybe that's a metaphor, that the present is a challenge. I'm lighting a candle for the present so that we will work together to make the world a better place, free of hate, free of strife. And I'm lighting a candle for the future so that your stories and your lessons, survivors, will be carried and made relevant by these young people you heard today in their lives as we go forth. And I think that we'll all agree that in the hands of people like these young people, I think that we are safe because they are so insightful and so their words were so powerful. I'm also going to light a fourth candle because we lost Judy Mizell this week, one of our survivors. Like you, a hero, like you, a friend, who also selflessly told her story many times. And when she came to this country, many of you know her story, a survivor of the Kovno ghetto, a survivor of the Stutthof concentration camp. When she came to this country, she could not stand what was going on as the civil rights movement was being fought, and she couldn't stand what she saw. And she fought again in the civil rights movement, and as many of you did. So for the rights of others, because once, after what she had been through, she couldn't stand what she was seeing again in this country, the land of freedom, the home of the brave and the land of the free. And it was hard to watch. So Judy also fought for the rights of others her whole life. And we lost her this week. She passed away, and we've lit a fourth candle for her. So at this point, we will say the Kaddish together. And Melanie will put the words on the screen if you'd like to join me. And if it's your custom to rise, you can. And I just ask for you to mute yourselves so that some of you, I think, are not muted, which is why you might be hearing an echo from me. You see on the screen the Hebrew, the transliteration on the left, if you'd like to join us, and the translation on the bottom of the prayer. This is for those of you who don't know, who are on the call, that are joining us today. This is the traditional prayer that Jews say for those who have passed away. And what is interesting is that there's no mention of death in this prayer. This is a prayer about life and about praising our Creator, the one who made us, and the one that we praise. But there's no mention of death. It's actually an expression of life. And that is, I think, a powerful statement in and of itself. So you're welcome to join me. And as the survivors think about who they lost, and we all think about the 6 million Jews, the 11 million human beings, we also think about whole families who don't have anyone to say Kaddish for, who were wiped out. And many of us who have family who passed, but for all humanity, we say this prayer, that we hope it will never happen again. And even though in our time we know that we worry about this. So the Kaddish, please join me. I have the words on the screen. Yikadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'yama divrach hirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, v'agala uv'isman kariv, v'imru amen. Yehe shmei rabbah mevorach, li'olam u'la'amei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, Shemei de Kudusha Brichu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechamata, da'amiran bi'ama v'imru amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mama, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael,
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
So I thought I would end with a song. And again, if you could mute yourselves, just because I'm getting an echo. Sorry. Thank you. Many of you might know the famous partisan Hannah Senesh, who was a hero, died in 1944 after being captured and parachuting behind enemy lines. She was executed in 1944. She was also a poet, and she left us this famous song. We think of it as, we call the song Eli Eli, but it's actually called A Walk to Caesarea is actually the name of the song. I will read the words first. It's a very familiar song. It's a moving song. Eli Eli shelo yigamer leolam, hachol v'hayam, rishrush shel hamayim, barak hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam. My God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayers of the heart. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hayam, berak hashamayim, tvilat ha'adam, hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tvilat ha'adam. My God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayers of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayers of the heart. The great Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, and someone who was part of the country, the Eastern European world that we will never be forgotten, made a profound statement once about Judaism's emphasis on memory. He said, "Redemption lies in remembering. We remember the bad and good which came before us, so that we can make tomorrow better than today and yesterday." I want to thank all of you for helping us remember today and for bringing light to the darkness. I want to thank Mike And I want to thank Melanie Jacobson and her amazing students for giving us hope for the future. I want to thank our wonderful survivor community for joining us, because these commemorations are not easy, and our wonderful community for joining us. I see a number of children of survivors that are with us today. It's a difficult time to be together, but it's a good time to be together. And thank you to the parents of the students that are here. And thank you to community members. And thank you all for coming together to remember an important day. I feel hopeful. It's definitely somber, but it's a hopeful somber. And thank you so much. The students give us courage, and the students give us hope. And we thank you. And thank you so much for coming together. I'm overwhelmed with your insight and your
Melanie.
honesty. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie.
Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Everyone.
Thank